Hello, everyone. I think that this is the biggest crowd we've had, so well done, all of you. Thank you. My name is Todd Deck, and I'm the Community Engagement Manager here at the Sacramento Public Library, and I want to welcome you all to Casey McQuiston Enters the Chat. After the conversation tonight, we will have a book signing in the entryway, so just go out these doors and you can get your autograph. We will be doing photos, but they'll be candid shots, not posed ones. What else should I tell you? This has been about a 2-year-long process. Katie Ball is our special projects coordinator, and she put together the amazing balloon arch and all of that. And I think one of my first meetings with Katie in the position, she was actually wearing red, white, and royal blue earrings, and so I thought we need to make this happen. If you didn't get to go do the magnet, balloon arch, anything like that, it will be open at the end of the program tonight. Okay, so that's kind of the business. Restrooms are that way. Casey is going to be interviewed tonight by Jeff Adams, and yeah. Jeff is an author of queer romance and queer young adult stories. For 9 years, Jeff and his husband co-hosted the Big Gay Fiction podcast, which shared the joy of queer romance with author interviews and book recommendations. And in fact, Jeff's 2019 conversation with Casey talking about the release of Red, White, and Royal Blue is the show's most popular episode ever. So Casey McQuiston is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of romantic comedies, including One Last Stop, Red, White, and Royal Blue, I Kissed Shara Wheeler, and The Pairing. Red, White, and Royal Blue was adapted into a movie in 2023 and released on Amazon Prime. Casey was recently named on the 2022 Time 100 Next list. Their writing has appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, Bon Appetit. Born and raised in southern Louisiana, Casey now lives in New York City with a poodle mix named Pepper. And I just want to celebrate everyone here tonight who reads romance and supports that. We did this tonight for you, so thank you for coming and supporting that. And welcome, Jeff and Casey. Come on up.
Hello.
All right, so much good stuff to talk about tonight. So it's almost February, which is shocking, but that's of course, with Valentine's Day, it is a time for love. So it is so great that we get to talk about romance tonight and rom-coms. And I want to throw back for a second to something that you said in our 2019 interview, where one of the inspirations behind Red, White, and Royal Blue was that, and this is a quote, "I really was looking for the perfect fun, escapist, tropey rom-com that was so undeniably fun that the fact that it was also queer wouldn't keep it out of the mainstream. A big thing that I want to do as an author and as a queer person is push these stories into the mainstream and be like, hey, it's kind of like what they say in Love, Simon. Everybody deserves to have a great love story. And so everybody deserves to have a big, shiny, tropey, fun rom-com," which I think you do over and over again in these books. So I'm curious with that, what is it about rom-coms that brings you in as like a reader or an audience member at a movie, and then what turned that into what you wanted to write?
Wow. Okay, first of all, I just have to get this off my chest. There are so many of you. Wow. Thank you all for being here. Oh my God. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that I feel like I'm one of those people, one of those writers, one of those very annoying types of writers who, if you ask me, when did you want to become a writer? I'm like, in the womb. Like, I just can't remember a time I didn't want to write. And along the same vein, I can't remember a time when my favorite kind of story wasn't a love story. I love a lot of different genres, but the thing that I tend to gravitate to within each genre is the relationships within it. And I think there is just this like alchemy and this magic and this thing that happens when just two people connect in the right way at the right time that I feel like is unlike anything else, and the like high I get from it as a consumer is unlike any other high, and it's just always been that thing for me. And I think that maybe it all goes back to the fact that one of the first movies I ever saw in the theater, maybe the first movie I ever saw in the theater, was You've Got Mail, which my mom took me to go see with her. And so maybe like it was just Nora Ephron imprinting upon my brain at like such a tender age, that it was like, yeah, you're gonna be a rom-com author, and that's just what it is. I don't know. It's just, I'm addicted to that feeling.
What a great introduction. I mean, a Nora Ephron movie doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah.
For you, what are some of the must-have components of a rom-com? I mean, as both someone who watches and someone who writes, and I'll precede this with one that I know from our first conversation. It's the karaoke scene.
Yes, I love a karaoke scene in a rom-com. We've all, or even honestly, truly, like any sort of communal musical number in a rom-com. Like, who amongst us is not delighted by like the scene in 13 Going on 30 when everybody starts doing the Thriller dance spontaneously, and like why does everyone at this party know the dance? I don't know. It doesn't matter. There's something about like even like The Breakfast Club, there's a dance sequence in. That's not even a rom-com, probably not, but spiritually it is. Ferris Bueller's Day Off, also, I'm ready to argue that that's a rom-com. It is a polycule. And there's a musical number in that. I don't know, that is not your question. Other components I love in a rom-com, oh my God, I love, obviously, we all know this, I love a forced proximity moment when, you know, it's like, oh no, we must duck and cover together in this small space. Like, oh no, we've been handcuffed together and someone swallowed the key. You know, I love that. I mean, I love like, anytime there's like a mistaken identity, or like, not to bring it back to Nora Ephron, but like Sleepless in Seattle, the whole like falling in love with a stranger over like unconventional means. Also, You've Got Mail. This is not a Nora Ephron product placement hour. But yeah, I mean, I could go on and on, so I'm gonna cut myself off because I know you have a lot of questions, but those are some of my faves.
When it comes to putting the rom-com moment in a book, how do you capture some of that more visual material? Because a karaoke scene, it's very difficult to write a song lyric into the book.
It's actually legally very difficult.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have ever considered this part of writing a book, but you're not legally allowed to include more than like 2 lines of a song in a book. And so like, for example, in the karaoke scene in Red, White, and Royal Blue, I had to edit those parts of that scene down because I turned in my manuscript and my editor's like, so we've run this through legal, and you can't just put in like a verse of a Queen song. We will get sued. And I was already afraid I was gonna get sued by the British Royal Crown, so I was like, let's really not push it. Let's not. But truly, that's like a thing that you have to think about. I think we had to work around that too, in the epigraph of I Kiss Shar Wheeler, which is a line from Mr. Brightside, which was like, I wanted it to be, it started out with a kiss, how did it end up like this? It was only a kiss, it was only a kiss. Legal was like, you can have it started out with a kiss. That's all. But anyway, but also, yeah, I mean, I think it's always really challenging because I have like a very visual brain. I think I consume, I would say on average, we all consume more movies and TV and visual media than we do books. And so it is sometimes really hard to switch your brain into that mode, into like, oh my God, and then like there's a dance number. That's not a scene. You can't write that. You can't just like step ball change your way through a romantic moment like you can in a movie. So you do have to, I think it's kind of getting creative about like, well, what are the feelings that are evoked by that moment? And like, how do you censor the scene on that instead? And I think like an example of that would be like in One Last Stop when August and the gang go to like the Christmas in July drag show. You know, obviously another time when legal was like, take these lyrics out. And that was okay because what I had instead was all of this like introspective stuff of how this music was making August feel and how seeing the dance number, like I don't need to describe the dance number in detail. I can't describe a drag number in detail. I am not a drag queen. I am not a choreographer. But I can describe the feelings that are welling up in August as she's watching the show, and I can describe Wes watching, you know, Annie dance and like his drink dribbling down the front of his shirt, and like that is more effective anyway. So yeah, it always comes back to feelings.
So we'll definitely be talking more about Red, White, and Royal Blue, but while we're talking about rom-com moments, how was it to see all of those in the movie when you got to see them like really on a big screen?
I mean, it was really fun because that is when then all of a sudden like things that took me pages and pages to get across can happen in like a 30-second shot. Like, you know, like the scene at New Year's Eve when in the movie when like Alex and Henry are like in the crowd dancing and then like the entire crowd kind of disappears for a moment and they're just like looking across the room at each other. Like it takes me like 3 pages to describe that feeling and it took that you can capture in that one shot. And so like that's like such an amazing moment when you can write a story and put all of this labor into it and then see it kind of like metamorphosize.
There you go.
Sure. Become something else that is different and beautiful in its own way. I mean, it's kind of indescribable. I don't know how to describe it, but it is one of the coolest things that's ever happened in my entire life. I mean, amazing.
And it's interesting, I think, to think about the ways that a story morphs as it moves. Because I think even from a book to an audio book can also have that bit of a difference because now it's not just the words, even though they're the same words, you know, however the narrator is doing the characters, putting in the inflections, it can change it that way too.
Yeah.
Do you engage with your audiobooks?
Oh yeah.
To listen to them to proof and whatnot? And
I do. I'm always like, I get to be involved in like sort of the selection process of I mean, typically like we have an amazing production department in Macmillan Audio who will kind of do the casting, but then they'll send me like, here are the auditions, and like you listen and you tell us what you think. But I'm also, one of my favorite parts of the entire process of writing a book is at some point I get an email where they're like, Casey, what do you think these characters sound like? And I get to write a little email where I'm like, I'm gonna describe all of their like voices, and like, that is so fun. I get to be so nerdy about it. And so yes, and then we get the audiobook and I get to listen to it. And that is always such an interesting experience. The only audiobook of mine I've actually listened to all the way through is One Last Stop because it's sort of like listening to yourself talk when, like on a recording where you're like, oh God, oh my God, this is like, it's weird. It's like listening to your own words out loud. I especially find it hard to, I've gotten over this, but at first it was really hard to listen to someone read like a spicy scene I had written out loud, because I'm like, oh my God, like an adult human being had to read these words out loud because of me. I'm like I'll never forget like listening to the Red, White, and Royal Blue audiobook for the first time, being like, Ramon was on the West Wing. Like this is an actor. This is like a card-carrying SAG-AFTRA member who was like saying these things. I'm like, I'm so sorry. But like, that actor loved doing that book. I've met Ramon. Ramon is absolutely delightful and wonderful, and I think to this day is still proud of the work that we did together on that book. So yeah, I think I'm an audio reader, I would say primarily. Sorry to say that inside the library, but I mean, I adore getting to be part of that process.
you got to do that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to go into the booth for the pairing.
Oh my God,
How did that turn? How did that come out?
It was scary. Well, yeah. So like in between when I Kiss Shara Wheeler came out, well, when in between production of that the I Kiss Shara Wheeler audiobook, which is also a great audiobook, and starting production on this one, it was when I became primarily an audio reader. And so by the time that production cycle came around, I was like writing to like Amelia, who is like the producer on the book, and I was like, guess what? I'm going to become way more annoying to you now because I'm really interested in this process now, and I really want to see like how this happens, and I want to be really involved. And they were like, sick, we would love to have you as involved as you want to be. And so they invited me to come sit in on a few recording sessions, and then they were like, would you be interested in like reading the chapter interstitials and the chapter headers? And what's so funny about that was when I was writing the book, I went out of my way to use like the actual names for these dishes that were in the pairings between chapters in their original language, because I was like, oh, it's immersive. And having no idea that I was gonna have to read them out loud one day. And so I go into the studio and like, I just told you I don't like listening to the sound of my own voice. So I go into the studio with like an award-winning producer who's been in the business for so long, and she's like, okay, Casey, so I think what might help you is if you do this when you say the Italian words. She's like, this is gonna seem offensive, but you just do this. And I'm like in there, I'm like, cornetto. But that was how I got through that. But it was so cool to like have the cans, as they say in the biz, on your ears. It's like be in the booth. It was such a treat. I was so geeked. I loved it.
That is amazing. I love how you just kind of ended up doing that.
I know, it reminded me of another time that I really screwed myself in like an audiobook situation, which is in Red, White, and Royal Blue, there's like a scene where Henry is like on FaceTime with Alex and he's in Wales. And I like went out of my way to find like a stupid name of a place in Wales, because Welsh is like famously a language full of long, hard to pronounce place names. And I found one that was like really silly, and I put it in and I had Henry say it more than once. And then what I didn't know is there's also a part of the process where the audiobook producer will be like, here's a list of words we want you to record yourself saying so we can make sure the audiobook narrator is saying them how you imagine. I didn't know that was gonna happen to me. And I literally had to phone a friend, like I had to like text a friend who's British and have her say it and record herself and then send that, because I just couldn't get it. Yeah, so be careful what you wish for.
So across the 4 books, you've written a very different spin on rom-coms every single time. Mm-hmm. You've got the royals, you've got some time travel, so a little speculative fiction going on there. You've done YA that had some mystery elements in it. Then with the pairing, we get this big travel, food and wine situation. Where does it come from, the themes and like the settings that you put these different things? Give us some insight into the creative process there.
Honestly, I feel like selfishly, it does kind of come out of what I'm really into at the time. Like Red, White, and Royal Blue came out of, I had just read The Royal We by Heather Morgan and Jessica Cox, and I really hope I just got their names not backwards like I always do. And then One Last Stop, honestly, the idea of that came to me literally the day I got home from a trip to New York, and I was just thinking about how romantic I found the subway, which like now that I've lived in New York for 5 years, I'm like, that's crazy. I saw somebody have their bare ass on the subway seat the other day, and I was like, hell yeah, brother. Anyway, and then One Last Stop actually kind of came out of what I was working on in therapy at the time, because I was like 29, and I was like, it's time to finally unpack the way that I went to Jesus school for 13 years. And my therapist was like, it's crazy you've never mentioned that before. And I was like, yeah, I didn't think it had affected me, but I think it did. And then, yeah, the pairing, I think, it was such like, for me, such like a post-isolation book. You know, like I wrote Ika Shawweiler, the first draft in like peak lockdown. And The Pairing was my first chance to start a manuscript after being vaccinated and like being able to go back out into the world. And I needed to go out into the world and like, not even like a dirty way, but like put things in my mouth and put my mouth on things. Like things that you weren't allowed to do during COVID. And I was like, I need to eat, I need to taste, I need to touch, I need to feel, I need to see, I need to be places. And so like that was where The Pairing came from for me. So I don't know. I mean, selfishly as a writer, you do sometimes have to like surrender to the fact that whatever your next manuscript is gonna be like, for me, the next 1 to 2 years of my life is gonna be about this. And, you know, for me, sometimes it's just like, what is sparking me? Like, what is sometimes it's just chasing a hyperfixation, but it works.
Let's talk about The Pairing for a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, I imagine this crowd's all read it,
I hope so.
but just in case, tell us a little bit about what that story is.
Yeah, I mean, The Pairing, the elevator pitch is, it is a story about two bisexual exes who haven't seen each other in 4 years and are involuntarily reunited when they wind up accidentally booking the same 3-week European food and wine tour and are trapped together on a bus through the most beautiful, sensual sights, sounds, and flavors of Europe for 21 days.
Talk about forced proximity.
Yeah, I told you I loved it.
It's not often you can pull it off for 3 weeks, though.
Yeah, no, it was a fun, very fun challenge.
How much research did you get to do for that? Because that's a lot of place, that's a lot of food, it's a lot of wine.
It was a lot of research. I really thought I definitely thought I knew enough about wine to kind of like hand wave my way through it. And I was like, I'm gonna read 2 wine books and I'm gonna be good to go. And I got into it and I was like, oh my God. And so I took some wine classes and in the end I did end up like feeling like I had learned a lot and wrote a lot of wine things into this book and like was very confident. And I reached out to the Somm at El Buco in New York, and I was like, hey, I would love to like have you be my consultant on this. I would love to send you some pages and just have your opinion, thinking like, I'm gonna get a pat on the back from a sommelier, and like this will be great. And then she sent me like 8 pages of notes, and I was like, okay. But like that, I mean, that was part of it. And I went to Europe, and I did like as many things as I could. I took the Vespa tour in Rome, and my Vespa tour guide was named Angelo. And I did like a really, really sweaty, like 12-hour day trip from Florence, like on a bus through like Siena and Pisa and like just like the Tuscan countryside. And I was like, it's really important for me to be on a bus and experience what that is like and see like what are the types of people who are on buses in Europe doing these tours. And that's how I found out that like there will always be like 2 to 5 mid-20s to mid-30s Australian lads just having the time of their fucking life on one of these buses. And like there will always be like a Midwestern mom and her like strange adult son, and like there will always like that's all. These are like stock characters. There's always going to be an old Swedish couple, and like that was part of the research. I was really lucky. I happened to be going the summer I was working on that manuscript. I happened to be going to London to film my cameo in the Red, White, and Royal Blue movie. And so Amazon had bought me a flight to Europe, and I was like, well, while I'm here, I'll just take the Eurostar to Paris. And I did like Paris to Barcelona to Florence to Rome, and I did all of that then. And I mean like, and there were things about the book that would have never come to be if I hadn't done that trip. Like one of my favorite scenes of the book, and one of the most important scenes in like understanding the way that Kit loves Theo, is like the scene of him going to the Uffizi Gallery and looking at the Birth of Venus, and then going and sitting in the piazza and like looking at Theo in the sunset in front of the Duomo. And that moment I would have never come up with if I was just looking at this place on like Google Maps, but going there and feeling what I connected with there gave me those scenes. And also going to Barcelona and seeing how close the balconies are to each other in the Gothic Quarter, I was like, oh, that's a scene right there. Like these are ideas that you have to experience physically sometimes.
Did you manage to go to every stop on their tour?
I haven't yet. So by the time I had published the book, I had only been to like 4 or 5. I have since gone to San Sebastian and Saint-Jean-de-Luz, and I am going to do a book festival in Naples this year, which I'm very excited about. So I'll get to do that. But no, I have many more to check off the list.
And it sounds like you pretty much created the supporting cast from your bus ride.
Yeah, I mean, the Callums were interesting. So the Callums were partially like created from like that stock character of the Australian guy that's like in every European city on a holiday. But there's also my friend, a friend of mine did study abroad in Amsterdam, and she lived above 2 Irish guys who were both named Callum. And she was telling me this story while I was working on this book, and I'm like, can I have that? Can I have it? Can I use this? And she's like, sure. And I was like, gonna just take the concept and change their names. And I just could not think of something that was funnier than Callum. So that was where the Callums came from.
There are so many tropes in this book. Yeah. We talked a little bit about the forced proximity. Obviously, there's second chances. There's all the travel stuff. How do you think about your tropes, and how many do you like to pile in books just to make them the most tropey thing ever?
Oh my God, I feel like I'm not usually thinking like I must fulfill my trope quota as much as I am like attracted to what is a way that I can incorporate a beloved trope in a way I haven't seen it executed before. Like I think that forced proximity is something that a lot of stories use, but I had not yet seen somebody drag it out over 3 weeks. There are things that I think when you're writing a story that's also messing with like gender and sexuality and queerness, that you have hopefully an opportunity to kind of breathe a little new life into some tropes. And so sometimes what I'm doing is like taking the deck and shuffling it around and being like, okay, these are the tropes that I love. This is one I haven't played with yet. I hadn't yet done just one bed. And so I'm like, we're gonna do just one bed, matched with another trope of mine, horny dream, horny action, which is when somebody is having, shall we say, an erotic dream of someone and perhaps subconsciously acts on it. Listen, I was really in my bag. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna be honest with you here. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've lost track of the question, but
I think you answered it really well.
Fun. I'm just having fun.
That story knocked me off my train of thought. You mentioned favorite tropes. What are some of your favorites? Besides forced proximity, you can't say that one again.
Oh my God. I mean, I do love Just One Bed. I love Just One Bed. I really just love opposites attracting. Like to me, when I'm developing characters, it's really important for me, like when I'm developing a main pairing in a romance novel, I always am developing those 2 main characters really in tandem with each other because I want them to complement each other, I want them to complete each other. And so like that's why like I think Alex and Henry I think of very as like fire and water. And I think August and Jane I feel like are very like earth and air. And Chloe and Shara are very like angel devil, I would say. And then Kit and Theo are, I think, the closest I've come to not doing opposites attract, because they are so entwined in each other and they grow up together, so they're very similar in a lot of ways. But in other ways, they're very like the one who can't leave the ground and the one who can't stay out of the clouds, you know. And I'm really attracted to opposites attracting. I find it very satisfying to write. I don't know, I feel like that's like my biggest, I've just identified that is the greatest trope I love. But I'll do a silly one now. I really like, I love a forgotten first meeting. I think it's because I was like a big Anastasia kid. But like the way when he remembers that they met in the palace and he realizes that she really was Anastasia and they've met before. That's romance, baby.
I like how you just described Theo and Kit as the one who can't get their head out of the clouds and the one who can't take off.
Yeah.
In a book that is full of so much funny, the way that grounds those two, no pun intended there, but grounds those two and gives them that moment to try to sort of heal each other a little bit, or kind of bring one appropriately back out of the clouds and the other one. I just found that so crazy satisfying in that book. I love an opposites attract as well, but there was something about that one that just locked in so well. Did you always see that for them as you were like building the story to be their opposite?
Yeah, I think I did, because I think, yeah, like I said, I think I was always developing them more than any of my other characters. I think I developed them in tandem with each other because I knew that they were going to have this like really deep enmeshed connection. And so I think what came first was I kind of had this idea of Kit as like almost like a fairy prince in my mind, you know, being this almost like fantastical type of character. And I was really interested in the concept of like, can you be too much of a romantic? And like, how does romanticizing everything in your life sometimes backfire on you? Because that's happened to me. Like, I'm definitely the kind of person who romanticizes everything. Not so much like as I've gotten older, but like I definitely was something I did a lot when I was younger. And I think I was really interested in that, and I was like, what would challenge that kind of person? And I think what was like kind of difficult for him with Theo, I mean, like Theo is someone who so desperately just needs to be seen, and Kit like couldn't see them through his own fantasies of what their life could be, you know? And the idea of getting them to the point where they're both having those needs met was like, oh, this is what it must be like, what like a really successful couples counselor feels like. You know, I was like, yeah, oh, we're cooking, baby. Yeah, so it was definitely like there with those characters from jump.
I was interested too in how you played the story out, because so often in a rom-com or a romance, it's like back and forth, chapter, point of view. And here it was a whole big chunk of Kit, and then it was a whole big chunk of Theo, and it's like, oh, that's really interesting to just pivot it that way.
Yeah.
Was that always there from the beginning, or did that manifest itself as you got into it?
Yeah, it actually like, that was like the hardest thing for me to figure out when I started writing the book, was because originally it was going to be alternating POV, and actually like at the very end of the book, we have like, there's like one chapter where, hopefully you guys have read it. I'm going to spoil the ending.
So many of them clapped when I mentioned it. I feel like we're pretty safe.
I'm not going to spoil the whole ending, but there's like a scene where it's like Kit is like doing his like normal daily life in Paris, and that was originally like going to be the second chapter of the book, or like some parts of that are like salvaged from like the original second chapter of the book, because it was going to be alternating POV, and I just couldn't wrap my mind around how I was going to do it and how I was going to like maintain the tension of like what I need to hold back from the reader for each of these characters to like make the story work. And actually, I was on tour in Brazil in like the fall of 22, and E. Lockhart, the author of We Were Liars, was also on tour with me in Brazil because our Brazilian publisher had brought both of us down to go to a couple festivals. And we're literally like on a gondola, like sightseeing in Rio, and I'm just describing this problem I'm having. And Emily's like, well, have you thought about doing it this way? Just like doing the first half of the book from one POV and the second half from the other. And I'm like, that's allowed? You could, like, I had never seen a book do that, so I just assumed it just like wasn't allowed. And I forgot, like, I'm writing a book from scratch. Like, you can just do stuff. And so that's like where that was like the light bulb moment. And I'm so happy that I had that advice. I got that advice because like that to me, the moment I think, to me, I wanted like the most satisfying and like exciting moment for the reader to be when you get halfway through the book and then you flip to Kit's POV and you find out how he's really been feeling this whole time. I wanted that to be the moment that's like the key change, you know, like when like you like sit forward, you're like, oh my God, you know, like I wanted that emotional experience for the reader, and I'm so happy I got to create it.
I totally got that in the audiobook because it's just moving along, and moving along. Oh,
yeah.
Now we're going to do this.
Yeah.
This book is so funny, too. It has these wildly poignant moments, and then there's like this screwball stuff that goes on. Like, my favorite, I think, scene overall, at least from the comedy standpoint, is all the stuff that goes down on the boat when they crash the boat party.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
Yeah.
How was it to set up some of those things? I mean, I don't imagine you crashed a boat party while you were
I did not.
over there, but maybe.
Sadly, I've never even been to Monaco. You know, I mean, I have been on a lot of boats. I was telling you, I have like a storied history of booze cruises. I love to go. Anytime I'm in a place that has like a booze cruise, you can book like a touristy booze cruise. I'm gonna be on that thing. And that is, I told you this. If I ever leave this job, I'm gonna become a booze cruise DJ. That's what I want to do. I think it'd be the best.
It's a good combo between writer and booze cruise DJ. You could totally do that.
That could totally be like my summer gig. I do have my boating license in 2 states. But anyway, they say gays can't drive. But anyway, no, I mean, yeah, honestly, like some of the comedy scenes did naturally come from like silly things that happen when you travel. But then like some of the comedy stuff, like, oh my God, the scene, I don't even know if I'm allowed to say these words in a library. But the scene where there's like a communication failure with the 2 Swedes, where they're trying to describe a part of the male anatomy that sounds really funny if you say it with a Swedish accent. And in a Swedish accent, it would sound like kumgutter. And when you read if you haven't read the book, you will get this joke when you get to it. That part was literally like me riffing with a friend on like, how can this scene be funny? And sometimes that just is what it is. Sometimes life is about having funny friends. But yeah, I don't know. I was just goofing. I was just having a fun time. I really, it's hard to describe where I come up with jokes because genuinely it's just like me sitting in my office and being like, haha, I'm so funny. And then like sometimes I read them back out loud and I'm like, I'm not that funny. But sometimes it does land.
Kind of moving backwards a little bit more now to One Last Stop.
Yeah.
We had talked about One Last Stop as like the teaser on the end of our interview in 2019 because you'd basically turned it in by then, but you couldn't say a whole lot.
Yeah, it hadn't been announced yet, I don't think.
Right, and I couldn't imagine from the snippets that you told me, it's like, what on earth is that gonna be? How did you go from Red, White, and Royal Blue, which is, you know, contemporary, albeit alternate universe material, to something that has time travel and speculative fiction in it, and it's also a rom-com?
Yeah, I will always be thankful to my editor, Vicky, for the fact that, like, I had sold her just a really, like, straightforward commercial rom-com for my first book. And then with my second one, I literally prefaced the pitch I sent her with like, this is gonna sound crazy. It's gonna sound crazy, but I promise you I can pull it off. But like she did not know yet that I had already written like 20,000 words of it, and I was not taking no for an answer. But thankfully, it didn't come to that. But I was like, listen, just hear me out here. So I had just taken this trip to New York, and I literally was like taking like like post-trip depression when you're like sad because you just had a really fun trip with your friends and it's over. I was like taking my little sadness bath, and I'm just thinking about the trip, and I'm thinking about all the times I rode the subway, and then I'm thinking about how like, shit, I need to come up with new book ideas soon because I just sold one and I'd like to quit my job. And the words like magic subway lesbians just came to my mind. I'm not joking, that's how it happened.
That could have been the title.
Actually, I did. Okay, so can I detour quickly into like all of the titles that One Last Stop almost had? Because it was Subway Girl, and then I really wanted to call it August on the Third Rail, and no one liked that title. No one liked that title. They were like, this is not a Death Cab for Cutie song, like, please calm down. And then my editor came up with One Last Stop. But anyway, but yeah, originally Jane was gonna be like a ghost, and I couldn't figure out how to give that a happy ending. And then I am a huge fan of Lost. I grew up watching Lost. I've watched the whole show so many times, and I've always thought that Desmond and Penny on Lost was like one of the most romantic love stories ever, because if you haven't seen the show, Desmond is kind of like unstuck from time, and he's like flashing forward and back a lot. His constant, like in the scientific theory of his temporal displacement, he has a constant that like he will continue flashing forward and back in time until he makes contact with his constant, and his constant is Penny. And there's like, I was obsessed with the idea of somebody who was the opposite of unstuck. He was unstuck. Jane is stuck. Jane is pinned to a place. And so I really loved the idea of like that one person who can solve your temporal puzzle. And I think that is like, it's just so romantic. And so that was where that started. That was a really long answer to a simple question, but that.
I love how you framed that, because it also reminded me as you were talking like how I felt reading that book. I know a romance has to end happy. Mm-hmm. And in that case, I'm like, how is that going to resolve itself?
Yeah. I love, you guys, my favorite thing in the world is a second to last chapter fake out sad ending. And I'm going to keep doing it. And you're gonna eat it up every time. I'm joking. I love you. I'd be nothing without you. But truly, I love an unhappy ending when I'm reading. I write rom-com. I cannot do an unhappy ending, but I'm gonna sneak like a fake unhappy ending in there, because sometimes we need to see what that feels like to get the satisfaction of the end of the story.
I don't mind a really sad black moment. Mm-hmm. To even make me more feel like,
well, listen, what are highs without lows?
Exactly. All right, so now back to where we started.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you another quote from when you were on the show. This book's been out nearly 6 years now, and we were talking before we started that time feels very broken these days, and It's like, 6 years, really? This May will be 6.
Yeah, and you interviewed me before the book came out.
A little bit before the book came out. The episode aired the week before the book came out, so we probably talked in middle April-ish. The movie had just been announced a couple days before she and I talked, because it was announced right before the book came out. So we were talking about on the show about the movie, and you told the story about going to see Love, Simon. We keep coming back to Love, Simon here too, there's a theme. And you'd gone to see Love, Simon in the theater about a week after you signed the deal on Red, White, and Royal Blue. And you said to me about that, I just remember getting in my car and thinking if my book could make people feel half as seen as I just felt watching that movie, then I will be so happy. Are you happy? I hope.
Yeah, no, I am. I really am. I really, really am. I mean, I couldn't be more thankful for I think I've been blown away by how much people have felt seen by that movie and how much it means to people, and I'm just I continue to be amazed by that. It's just, I don't even have the words for it. It's incredible. I can't, I remember like sneaking a Jimmy John's sandwich into Love, Simon and weeping into it. And I just know what it meant to me to see a story that I adored, that was something that reflected something like me. And I just really am so happy that I made a movie.
How was it to watch that experience? You talked a few minutes ago about getting to go to London to film your scene. How was that experience to watch what was a book for a number of years? Because there was certainly the gap between when the option got picked up and when they started shooting it. But to see how the script evolved and to get to go watch it come to life on a set and then finally get to see it in a theater.
I mean, I don't think at any point it felt real to me, like not during the script, not during the casting, not anything until I was on set. Like when we got to, I will never forget like pulling up to set the first day and seeing if you could imagine a guy who works on a movie set and it's like, he's like 45 and he's wearing like cargo shorts and like a little safari vest and he's got like a bunch of tape and like cables and he's like walking around and I looked around and there's like craft services and there's like a props truck and I'm like, this is like a small village where like 100 people have jobs that has been set up around making a movie of my book. What? Like that was the most bizarre moment. One of the most bizarre moments of my life was like pulling up to set, and that was when it felt real for the first time. And then like 3 seconds later, I saw Uma Thurman, and I was like, what's happening? I mean, it was wild. It was just like, I don't even, like, everything about it was wild. The way I met Nick for the first time was I had gone to the bathroom while they were going to get our craft services, and he had come to set to meet me. He wasn't shooting that day, but he came to set to meet me and introduce himself. And he literally like hid around a corner so that he could like jump out and scare me. I'm like, what is wrong with you, first of all? But also like to be jump scared by the physical manifestation of your own fictional character was like, the human brain was not made for this. You know, I mean, it's wild. It's amazing.
And you shared your experience in the recording booth for the pairing. How was it to actually be before camera?
It was so weird. I mean, so like, I'm gonna try and tell the story as like briefly as possible because I know we're like getting close to time, but it's a great story. So the day we were on set, so the day I filmed my cameo, we were doing this, like basically what you would call like a oneer. So it was like, they wanted to do this long tracking shot for like the election night sequence where it was all one take of like going all through, we're like at the Four Seasons in London. We're going all across the entire floor of this hotel. And my job was, I was playing Ellen's speechwriter. So it's like me, Uma Thurman, and Sarah Shahi sitting in this room by ourselves with like 2 crew members. And we're part of like this long sequence. So we had to stay on our marks and they just were shooting this scene over. They were shooting this over and over because like every single take, one thing would go wrong and we'd have to start the whole scene over again. So I'm sitting there for like 4 hours in this room with Uma and Sarah, and like Uma stayed in the accent the whole time. She's like, Sarah's telling us about this pizza she and her husband had for dinner last night, and Uma's like, I think we need to get us that pizza. She's like on the phone. She's like with her sister, like, yeah, I need to get a pizza. She's like, well, what do you think? You think we should get a sausage? I think we should get a sausage. like what the fuck is that? And then like, I mean, there were so many things. It was like, and like, if anything would go wrong, we'd have to stop the take. So like at one point, we had like that one scene at the beginning where we're looking very serious, we're getting bad news, and then they call it, and then we had to like jump up and hit our next marks. We run in, and like we jump up, and this is like 4 hours in, and Uma's mic pack falls out of the back of her skirt, and I'm like, and me and Sarah look at each other like, if we cannot get this mic pack back in, we're losing this take, and everybody's gonna be pissed at us. So like me and Sarah like shove this mic pack back up Uma Thurman's skirt. Like, we got it, go! Like, it was such a surreal experience. It was so crazy. And then, yeah, I mean, like, and then we got, like, literally, like, the last take before lunch, we got everything was perfect, and then Taylor's suit jacket sleeve got stuck on a door handle in the last shot and ripped. And so the costuming was mad at us, too. It was, like, but it was a day. It was a great day.
If there's ever DVD commentary that you get to record, that needs to be in there.
Yeah.
So there's a sequel coming.
Yeah.
And this time out, you're co-writing the script with Robert Lopez,
Matthew Lopez.
Sorry, Matthew. Matthew Lopez, who directed the first one and wrote the first screenplay.
Yes.
2 questions on that. What's it like to work on a screenplay?
Yeah.
And what's it like to have a collaborator for the first time? Because you have it co-written.
Yeah. I mean, working on a screenplay, I mean, like I said earlier, there's so many things that you can do in a movie that you can't do in a book, and that you can do in a book that you can't do in a movie. And I learned really fast there's reasons for that. And the biggest problem I had when we first started out was, like, there's so many things I'm like I'm pitching, and we're like, this is great, this is a book thing. I'm like, shit, you're right, that would take me like 2 chapters to do. And you know, like, trying to understand how to portray subtleties in a character's inner monologue through like a script is hard, especially when it's like trying to be a snappy, like, hour-and-a-half rom-com. Like, that's really hard. And so like that was a huge learning curve for me. Thankfully, I do tend to write like a lot of a lot of like the banter that I write in my books, I write basically as a script first. Like, I'll like completely take everything out and just do like writing the back and forth of the conversation, and then I go back in and fill in the details. So like I was ready to work like that in my brain. But there were so many things where like I'm writing like 4 paragraphs of prose to like set the scene, and the producers are like, Casey, we know what things look like. like, okay, you're right. This is great, but like you don't need to spend half a page on this. So that I've learned so much. I mean, working with a collaborator has been like its own adventure, because like, yeah, I am very used to being able to go in my little hole and like work on my little projects and like do it in whatever way I want to do it. And it's been such an interesting and like educational, for lack of a better word, experience to get to work with someone else and to like have somebody to bounce these ideas off of, and to like have like debates over like, well, like character and like this could go here, and like how's the story math, let's do a chart, and like all of this stuff. It's been really interesting, and I'm sure it has made me a better writer. Yeah.
So here's a question that I'm imagining will have not a real answer to it at all, but can you tell us anything about the movie?
I can tell you that there is a script in some stage of existing. And I can tell you that we announced it last year, and that remains true.
Well, I'm glad that hadn't changed. So the original Red, White, and Royal Blue was heavily influenced by the 2016 election. Mm-hmm. As we sit here today, and you're working on this script, we're kind of back in the same spot.
Some might say it's worse. Some might say.
Does that kind of factor into your thinking about the sequel, even though they're happily in this alternate universe place?
Honestly, it's made it harder to write. It really, I'm gonna be real honest with you guys. Sometimes I'm sitting here, I'm like, I feel foolish right now. I feel it's really hard to access this brain space right now. Like, it just is. But talk to my friends about this, talk to my therapist about this, like, what am I doing here? Like, how can I get my heart in this? Sometimes, some days it's hard to get my heart in it because I look around and I'm like, this is not recognizable. These two worlds are not the same species. You know, like, I don't know how to write this script in this world I'm living in right now. And the thing is that things have always, throughout history, things have been bad and art has been good. And that has to matter. And it is incredibly convenient for me to feel overwhelmed and defeated. It's incredibly convenient to the people who wish for me to feel powerless. And so I have to fight really hard to not feel that way, and to make art, and to make good art, and to make art that matters to people, and that makes people feel reflected and seen, and or even just happy, or like they're having a fucking good day for once, you know? To watch something or read something that for like an hour allows you to not be scared and not feel imperiled, and to feel surrounded by something that means good things for you. That has to matter. And I refuse to let it not matter, no matter how hard it is to get there some days when I sit down at my desk. It's been hard. It's been really hard lately. But it has been harder in the past, and people made art and it mattered. That's all I have.
And I think that was true absolutely for the first book too.
Yeah.
Even when that came out, you know I felt that way about it, that it's like, oh, here's this alternate universe that I could escape into for a few hours, you know, and to pull out of that. Was writing the first book similarly hard to what you're seeing with the movie now, since it was kind of, you know, being written in that same time frame?
It's harder now. It's harder now. I'm gonna be honest with you. It is harder now. I mean, I'm older now. And I didn't think this would happen again. And so that's bad. It's bad. I'm not gonna lie, it's fucking bad. But I do have the benefit now that I didn't then of feeling like I have a lot more I can do about it. And being in a place in my life now where while in a lot of ways visibility is vulnerability, it is also empowering, and it's given me a lot of security in my life from which I feel like I don't have to feel as hopeless because there's things I can do. I feel like I can go to work and do stuff that matters, and like to at least some people. So it's different, it's hard, but on the days that it's good, it's really fucking good.
Yeah. And we're glad you're doing what you're doing.
Thanks.
So as we wrap up, because you've got books to sign and
I
people
got books to sign, baby.
And people to see, is there anything you could tell us, you know, besides there's a script you're working on? Anything else you can kind of tease us about what may be coming in the future?
I have a new secret. If anybody here happened to catch me on Pairing Tour, I was talking a lot about what I planned for book 5 to be. I now have a different plan. Respectfully, loved that idea. It is not what I'm doing right now anymore. because I came up with something I liked even better. And so I am working on something new, and it's very, very recent that this has been official. I'm working on a new book that's completely new. Don't anybody get any ideas about any sequels. It's not a sequel to anything. It's a completely new standalone, and it's an adult romance, and I don't know how much more I'm allowed to say, but it is, I think you're gonna really, really like it, and it's in the way that One Last Stop was contemporary with some fantastical elements. I would describe it that way as well. Perhaps even more fantastical, perhaps even romantastical, if you know what I mean. But you didn't hear that from me. I only said it into a microphone.
And with video running.
I forgot. I genuinely forgot. Sorry, Vicky. That's my editor.
All right, well, as we said, Casey will be out signing, so definitely get your book signed. Everybody, let's thank Casey McQuiston. Thank you for a great conversation.